So hi, my name is Bhavani and I'm originally from Mexico, and I started off as an architect for profession. I studied that for, the career was a 5-year career, and I worked through that another 7 years or so. So I loved that creative aspect of architecture, and at some point I just bumped into yoga, and it just really called me in a way that I wanted to exercise, but I wasn't really so fit to run. I didn't really know how to breathe properly, so all athletic type of exercises were very, very challenging for me. So for some reason, yoga felt something that seemed doable for me. I quite liked the movement, so became really fond of it. In the journey of that, I became so in love with it. I started to see the benefits of mental health, that it helped me. I started sleeping better. It really brought up a lot of self-inquiry until I just decided to do a teacher training, not really thinking of becoming a teacher, but I just wanted to learn much more about it. So I went off to Canada and did my teacher training, and there is when I met Ram. Ram was in Canada as part of the group for the teacher training, and we just started seeing each other, dating. He was from New Zealand, and we pretty much just went back and forth until he was already had a studio here in New Plymouth teaching. So I kind of just naturally started teaching here, and I just loved teaching, really loved sharing that side that I loved about yoga. So slowly, the creative process from architecture was kind of embedded into what I was teaching as well. So I just decided to go 100% to teach. And I've never looked back. I've taught now for almost more than 10 years. And we've created, from the yoga studio that we had, we also wanted to not only have people coming day to day, but have more immersions to talk much deeply about the other aspects of yoga, not just the physical side of it. So we decided to do weekend retreats, and we've now built Sanctuary Hill, which is kind of an urban retreat place that we offer daily classes. And we also have accommodation for people to come and stay on our programs for 3-4 nights to have the introduction to meals, to proper diet, more philosophy, and more in depth of yoga practices. Self-care for me, it's a very interesting word, because I've come to terms with the fact of self-care not being a short-term practice, but something more everlasting. So rather than picking little things, I think my goal that I set through the month or the year, if you like, it's almost every day taking steps towards that goal of well-being. So that is my self-care. So every day taking steps of things that help me feel in harmony with myself and be present, just very centered practices of connecting with my body. And that could be by taking some deep breaths, by journaling, just checking in with myself, or just doing my movements through my yoga practice. So all those feed to that one goal of well-being and being centered within myself. Definitely through COVID, I've noticed a lot of shift in people. I think the key word that I noticed a lot was what is essential, because we were really placed into only being able to like essential services, buying the essential foods and goods. So I thought a lot of the conversation that was happening around our circles and family was, well, what is essential? Everyone was asking those type of questions, and that brought people to really question what are they doing in their jobs and in the daily life to what is essential and important for them, that really nurtures the most basic things of their family, of their well-being. So I noticed a lot of conversations that happened because of that, surging from COVID. I did definitely notice people coming when we reopened after lockdown. It took a few weeks for people to come back, and I had even people that took even a month and a half or even 2 that suffer from anxiety for actually even coming out, having the lockdown time of isolation and then coming out to integrate themselves back to the community was very difficult. To know distancing, how to cope with that. I noticed that a lot. And I think that in myself I was also noticing their nervousness of, well, what's going to be like to hug again, to be close to someone again. I see there's a lot of much more awareness, conversations about awareness. It's much more open. There's an open dialogue and acceptance of questioning who I am and what is my goal, not only going through the norm of this is what I'm meant to do, have a career, marry, have kids, and that's that. I think there's much more questioning of that, and it's creating individuals to own their lives. But on the other side, I think I've noticed, probably from my generation and much more younger generations, there has been this kind of wave, this is my perception, that there's this whole new individualization of who we are, but it's almost losing a bit of purpose for a lot of people. It's almost like there's nothing to grasp. Everything is just just by the day. And I think our older generations had that very clear, that they were in their day they were preparing for the future, like their work, their savings, and I think a lot of people that I see now is just not so much investing in careers or on their longevity. I'm not sure why that is happening. So I've just noticed those two differences. These new generations kind of. It's just like it's so individual that it's just on the day. Like what happens in 5 years, I don't care, kind of thing. So a little lack of just direction in some ways. It's kind of, if you see it from a point of meditation, it's kind of defining the difference between your mind and your intellect. So your wisdom side, and then your mind that is just more reactive, more within the senses of which is just pleasures, just the immediate pleasure. As I started learning yoga, I noticed much more understanding of my mind. And it's funny because for some reason you feel like I've got this, everything's good, and then boom, you hit a wall and you see like actually there's just so much more to understanding. And I think it came to me around the time that Oliver was quite young. We were living in South Island, and Ram was working like full hours the whole day, and I was on my own with Oliver through the day. And being a young mother with a young child, and we were meeting in the middle of the sticks, there was just no one there. And I think I had never felt as alone, ever in my life, like there. So I remember being there and just constantly being lonely all the time. And there was almost no reception, Wi-Fi reception. So I would find myself so often trying to get my phone on the Windows, like just to get one bar of reception so I could just get into Facebook or just get that message from a friend, and just that ding would be like, oh, I'm not alone, there's just someone out there. And it was just day by day that was, the loneliness would come, and I would figure out a way to connect, and then that would alleviate the loneliness. Until one day I said, you know what, I'm just going to put my phone on the drawer and just leave it there. It almost felt like that ding was like my Panadol, or the plaster that was just trying to cover the feeling. So that was the first time that I just said, okay, loneliness is kind of showing up very constantly and strongly in my life. So there's a reason that is there. I've never really faced it face to face. So I decided just to go for a walk with Oliver and loneliness. So off we went, and every day became like that until I kind of realized how those sort of feelings that sometimes are so easy to push away, they're not as bad as they seem to be. And they do create much more strength and resilience within ourselves, and they did bring me a lot of understanding and strength when I faced those feelings. And it's not that those feelings will go away forever, they eventually come and go, but the fear of facing them is not as strong as constantly pushing them away and taking the Panadol every time to push them away. I think it comes to a point where you feel mentally strong enough to face them, or in a strong network to face those fears, the emotions that arise. And I think we all navigate those through our life. Just different things come, everything's okay, and then all of a sudden something comes. So I did feel that shift in my mind when I was just facing emotions, and then shifting my mindset to face them, to just be with those emotions. And I think emotions are a little bit like sandfly bites, that the more you scratch them, the more they itch. So the more you kind of just, open the door, come in, have a cup of tea, just sit with them, just being a bit more compassionate about those sides of ourselves, those shadows, they just eventually go away. I remember having a client that he had a very high level of the spectrum of anxiety, very high end, just really, really high levels of anxiety. And he came from a very strong sort of gym environment. Not to say gyms are not great, but the gym environment for him, the reason why he came to see us to practice yoga was because he was practicing in an environment of very no pain, no gain, lots of music, loud music in the environment. So that was increasing his anxiety. So he was trying to find ways to exercise without those external stimulations to cope with them. And I remember having a conversation with him, and he was like, well, what's all this self-awareness about? What's going to help me with that? And so we started talking a little bit more about the anxiety, and he identified himself like, I am an anxious person. He said, I'm always like this. And I just need to find coping ways to deal with it. So I said, well, have you noticed yourself? Well, how is your body when you're the most anxious? And he would be like, my breath is like, very agitated. I would have, clenched fists, or even a bit of like sharp eyes, or clenched teeth. And I was like, okay, well, how do you feel when you are, say, at home, resting somewhere that you really like at home, son, your pet, you're like taking care of your pet? Is your body like that? He's like, no, actually I'm like this, and my breath is like that, my hands are relaxed as I'm with my cat. And do you think that is showing some anxiety? He's like, actually no. So differentiating states can really give some shine some light into people to differentiate that they identify themselves within a state, and that there's other aspects that we're not aware of, that we change states depending where we are. Our body changes, our breath changes. So I think some people resist seeing into that because they have a very strong identification to, that's just who I am. And sometimes connecting this with this, it's so foreign that once we start to be here, what happens here, then it's just that identity becomes challenged. So yeah, I think the best way to do it for us is just we share very passionately what we know from our own personal experience. So even just modeling that is a way to share it, regardless of if someone will pick a few things or not. I would say that I think the ultimate self-care is to be the architect of your life, to know that you have that empowerment of designing your life every single day, to embrace what you really love and to honor that expression of yourself.